Welcome back to a very, very wet Silverstone. This is Ben Edwards with live coverage of the second round of the FIA Formula 3000 International Championship here on Eurosport. And the weather conditions have changed completely in the last half hour or so. We saw the end of Formula 1 qualifying with pretty much a dry track and everybody going faster and faster towards the end of the session. When the Formula 3000 cars came out on the grid a little while ago, they were all on slick tyres. Everybody had decided it was plenty dry enough to start on slick. But now just look at the rain that we have here this afternoon. A complete turnaround, much like yesterday where we saw periods of sunshine and then heavy showers. But this, one of the heaviest showers we've seen all weekend, and I think that we even spotted a little bit of sleet and hail in that shower a few moments ago. It's eased slightly, believe it or not, looking at those pictures. You can see the water in the puddles. But a few moments ago, it was even heavier than this, and we could barely see out of the commentary box window. So conditions have taken a real turn for the worse here. Remember, this race is the Silverstone International Trophy, and the International Trophy meeting here at Silverstone has been known for bad weather in the past. It is Easter weekend, and I have to say, Easter is doing its best or its worst this weekend with conditions for the Formula 3000s and indeed for the entire Grand Prix, with all the problems that have been associated at Silverstone this weekend, with the public not able to park their cars in the car parks around the track. But good to see that still a number of fans have managed to find some way of getting here today. Well, we do have 26 cars lined up on the grid. Of course, 30 cars entering into qualifying, always the case in Formula 3000 that you have to get onto the grid. 4 do not make it. Let's just take a look at the grid itself. Darren Manning on pole position for the race. Mark Webber will join him on the front row. Justin Wilson up there, another British driver. 2 British drivers in the top 3. Enrique Benoldi for Brazil and Bruno Junqueira for Brazil in 5th place. For France, Sahel Ayari in 6th. The Dutchman Christian Albers is 7th, then a Frenchman, Fabrice Wolfish 8th. Frank Montagny, also from France, is in 9th place. And then Christian Colby, the Dane, in 10th place. David Salem is next up, Jeffrey Van Hooydonk, and then Sebastian Bourdais and Mario Haberfeld, former British F3 champion, Riccardo Maurizio, Nicolas Minassian, winner of the first race at Imola. Look how far down the order he is, way down the order in 16th place. Kevin McGarity, the Irishman, down in 17th position. Stefan Sarrazin in 18th place, the driver of the McLaren Junior team, as we look further down the list. And look at Bas Linders, driving for Kid Jensen Racing, the team that won this race last year. And Bas Linders only really just making it onto the grid and starting in 25th position. His teammate sadly not making it onto the grid at all after the accident that we saw involving Thomas Eng yesterday. And so sadly, Andrea Piccini not on the grid for this afternoon's race. But look at these weather conditions. They are absolutely appalling. And the rain falling in torrents at the moment. The race is due to sort of set off on its warm-up laps fairly soon, but I think we may well see a slight pause with this amount of water being thrown down. And there you can see a pretty good get-up for the weather here at Silverstone. Just missing the welly boots. We can see a few people have got welly boots. The more sensible ones, remember to pack the welly boots, the umbrellas, and the full wet weather gear. That's exactly what is required here this weekend. I tell you, it's a very, very wet and muddy place to be at the moment. Looking down on the grid and on the pit lane, you can really see how heavily that rain is still falling. And isn't it great to see some of the British fans huddling up under umbrellas, waiting for the start of this race? That's what we like to see, some true enthusiasm from the fans in spite of the conditions. And that's the grass, the sort of conditions you might have expected to see if you'd managed to make it into any of the car parks today. Really, nobody would have been able to get back out again, I think. And it's just really the story of rain, and more rain at Silverstone this weekend. I have to say, it is a little brighter from where the weather is coming from, so perhaps this rain will ease slightly in a little while. The safety car parked up at the front end of the grid. As you see, Darren Manning's car there, the red colours of Manning's car on the right-hand side. Mark Webber in the orange and the black colours on the left-hand side. And just to confirm the points to you once again, just one round of the championship has been held so far. Nicolas Minassian, points leader, as the winner from Imola, 4 points ahead of Bruno Junqueira. Mark Webber in 3rd, and on down the list, Jamie Mello, Thomas Eng, and Fabrizio Golin. Those 6 drivers, the only people to score so far, but this afternoon a chance for somebody perhaps to establish a bit of a break up front. Of the championship favourites, or the championship front runners at the moment, You have to say that best placed is Bruno Junqueira. Junqueira starting in 5th place on today's grid, whereas the other front runners from that first race at Silverstone really have qualified quite poorly. Nicolas Minassian, the winner from Imola, starting down in 16th position, remember, so not a good start at all for him. And then on down the list, Mark Webber, of course, is the other man who's well up at both Imola and here at Silverstone, because Mark Webber starts on the front row of the grid. There he is, the Australian, and he finished in 3rd place at Imola, and he starts on the front row here today. So what an opportunity it is for the Australian to perhaps take the championship lead if he can get a good result here this afternoon. And for the man who's taken his return to single-seaters, that is very impressive indeed. And we hear that the start has been delayed for 10 minutes. The announcement has been made, an official announcement, that the start has been delayed for 10 minutes. So we wait to see whether this rain is going to ease off at all. Still falling very, very heavily. And as you can see, not many people sitting in the stands at this point. Do you blame them? Well, look at that. There's still somebody out there still determined that they aren't going to miss the action, and extremely well prepared with their gear. Well, always some fans here in the UK. That's what the British fan base is all about, and perhaps that's why so much of international motorsport is based in the United Kingdom. With that sort of support, it's not a surprise to see. We're going to take a quick commercial break here on Eurosport and return hopefully with some action from the Formula 3000. Welcome back to Silverstone, where the rain's still falling heavily at the moment, although there is a little bit of break in the clouds, I'm glad to say. So we're hoping that things will ease off fairly soon. The race has been delayed at least 10 minutes. It may be a few minutes longer than that, but hopefully, as I say, a little bit of break in the clouds and things might ease off. We've seen conditions changing so rapidly here at Silverstone this weekend. Looking at Britain's Justin Wilson, driving for Nordic Racing, he's qualified 3rd on the grid. Great performance from 2 British drivers so far here this weekend, Darren Manning and Justin Wilson. Manning qualifying on pole position and Justin Wilson 3rd on the grid. Mark Webber in between them, of course, a man well known to British motorsport fans, a former British Formula Ford racer, works Van Diemen driver. We're looking at one of the Frenchmen here in the Astromega team, Fabrice Wolfish, running with that team. Which we're waiting to start here at Silverstone. It's the International Trophy. It's round 2 of the FIA Formula 3000 International Championship, but as yet we're waiting for conditions to improve a little. I have to say they have. If you look at this shot, looking up pit straight, you can see a little bit more sunshine in the background there, and that has broken up the cloud a little bit in the last 10 minutes or so, and the rain not falling as heavily as it was when this race was due to start. So we're hoping that things will get underway within the next 10 minutes or so. Still a few hardy fans out there in the grandstand ready for this Formula 3000 event. They know that some of the drivers down there may well be in Formula 1 cars in the very near future. It's happened this year, of course. Last year's Formula 3000 champion, now driving for the Prost team, Nick Heidfeld, winning last year's series with 4 victories and now driving for the Prost Grand Prix team. Just looking at the eyes of Darren Manning, starting on pole position here today. And Darren very much enjoying his time in Formula 3000. Had a tough time at Imola, but he knows what a great opportunity he has with a good team this year and with the chance to be test driver for British American Racing as well. So to perform here today would mean so much to his future career. We've heard that the safety car has been around the track and has had a look at there aren't really too many puddles, too much standing water to start just yet, but they reckon within the next 10 minutes that the track could have cleared sufficiently for the race to get underway. So let's hope that that's the case. And it does look, as I say, that the rain has eased considerably over the last few minutes. Still falling, but not nearly as heavily as it was about 10 minutes ago. Wind has also dropped a little bit, so that's probably good news. A little less violent than it was. And take a good look again at the Arden team entry of Darren Manning. Ready to start from pole when this race gets underway. We're going to take another short break here on Eurosport. Rejoin us in just a moment. Welcome back to Silverstone. This is Ben Edwards. We're waiting for the start of the Formula 3000 race here. It's been delayed slightly by very, very heavy downpours, but it should be getting underway, we hope, within the next 5 or so minutes. Just taking another look at the grid, Darren Manning and Mark Webber on the front row, Wilson and Bernoldi, second row, Junqueira and Sohail Ayari, then Christian Albers and Fabrice Wolfish, Frank Montagny and Christian Colby, his teammates running together very competitively in qualifying yesterday. And Christian Colby got a little bit held up on his last lap, he was telling me, by Mario Haberfeld. Almost had a wheel banging session coming through the last part of the lap. Salins and Van Hooydonk, Bourdais, there is Haberfeld down in 14th, Maurizio Minassian, McGarrity, Sarrazin, Couto, and Thomas Eng, who suffered that big accident coming out of Woodcote in the early part of first qualifying. Then Mikola and Maslov, the Russian, who had a few offs yesterday. Jamie Mello had a few moments as well. Schelt, Leinders and Olivier rounding out our 26 cars on today's grid. Thank you for joining our coverage here on Eurosport. If you're one of the many who didn't manage to get to Silverstone today, you might have been planning to, but of course all the problems of the rain here this weekend, meaning that the car parks couldn't be used. Perhaps you were planning to come. Well, I'm sorry that you couldn't come, but I'm glad that you've been able to join us with our coverage here on Eurosport. We will be bringing you live coverage of all of the Formula 3000 races this year. It is such an important championship, this, and as I mentioned earlier, we've seen Nick Heidfeld come through just from last year. He's now in Formula 1. Don't forget that Juan Montoya won this championship 2 years ago, and just look at what he did in the Champ Car Series last year. He went on to become champion of that series and now defends the title again with one of the top teams in America. Ricardo Zonta was the 1997 champion, and he of course now driving for the BAR team in Formula 1, and Zonta qualifying in 16th place for the British Grand Prix here this weekend. Funnily enough, he's 1 place ahead of Nick Heidfeld, so there you are, 2 Formula 3000 champions who qualified pretty close together on the Formula 1 grid for the British Grand Prix. Of course, some drivers don't go through Formula 3000. That is the less usual way. Jenson Button famously moving up from Formula 3 straight into Formula 1 with that opportunity that he was given over the winter months, and Button doing a superb job to qualify for the Grand Prix in 6th place, of course. But this is the standard way of progressing through Formula 3000, and as I mentioned before, a number of these drivers, including this man here, Mark Webber, are already test drivers for some of the Formula 1 teams. Mark Webber has a contract with the Arrows team, and people have been watching that Formula 1 session with interest, I'm sure, see how they got on. Pedro de la Rosa qualified in 19th position, but Jos Verstappen in 8th place for the Grand Prix after qualifying here today. So Mark Webber would have been watching that with interest, I'm sure, although also getting ready for what is a very important race for him today. Engines have fired up, so it looks as though track conditions have improved sufficiently for the start of the course to say, right, let's get this race underway. And you can see all the cars very much on their wet weather tyres, a patterned groove tyre, very different, of course, to the circumferential grooves we see on the dry tyres of Formula 1. These cars use proper slick tyres still. They don't use groove tyres in dry conditions. So in the wet, this Avon Control tyre is the one that they all use, and it is quite a hard compound. I was talking to the guys from Avon earlier on, and they say that what they have to think about when coming up with a wet weather tyre for these cars is, as they go away on the warm-up lap now, the green flag lap, getting them underway, what they're saying about these tyres is it has to be a wet weather tyre that can deal with a circuit like Spa, for example, where you'll have rain on some parts of the track and dry on other parts of the track, and you want a tyre that will withstand that effectively. Now that means that it is a reasonably hard compound wet weather tyre that they use in Formula 3000. That means that car slides around a lot in wet weather, but it does mean that if the track dries out, that at least they can keep on the wet tyres, hopefully without having to change to slicks until it really becomes very dry. In the past we saw problems in that they would burn up the wet weather tyres very quickly. There is Kit Jensen himself, David Jensen, the radio DJ, now boss of the team here, of his own team, running Bas Leinders only in the race because his other car didn't qualify after the accident in first qualifying. But they were the winners of this race last year, remember, with Nicolas Minassian. Conditions were slightly better on that occasion, but Minassian was the race winner for Kit Jensen Racing here last year. This time, Nicolas Minassian with a different team, qualifying way down the grid, and Minassian down in 16th position on the grid. So there we are. You can see how much spray there is, even at these fairly reduced speeds as the safety car leads them around. Darren Manning is the man up front at the moment. And interesting to get some comments laps from pit lane. The car's heading round on the rest of this warm-up lap. Very wet conditions indeed at Silverstone as we prepare for the start of a 40-lap round 2 of the FIA Formula 3000 International Championship. Darren Manning leads them round. He's the man on pole position. Mark Webber alongside him on the front row. But just look at the amount of water on the track. It is going to be extremely difficult for these drivers, 26 of them, to keep control of their single-seater machines. 460 horsepower the engines produce, and that is plenty of power. They don't have nearly as much downforce, these cars, as Formula 1 cars, and that means lots of slipping and sliding. We saw it in qualifying yesterday, and I think we're going to see plenty of cars taking to the grass in the race here today. Just look at the conditions, the puddles on the grass there. That's how wet it is at Silverstone. It has eased in terms of the rain itself falling, but the track very wet indeed. I'm glad to say a good break in the cloud coming in from the sort of south direction here as the cars come out of Luffield and heading round. I think they'll get a second warm-up lap to acclimatise themselves to conditions, the safety car continuing round, and so they will not, or in fact it looks as though they may well be starting this race under safety car. So that looks to me what they're doing here. They're actually starting this race under safety car conditions. They are counting these laps, so that's interesting. They are counting these laps, and it will be started under safety car, and that's a good decision, I think, a sensible decision to make with these conditions being as bad as they are. Just look at that. You can't see a single thing as they go through, and the idea here is just to give the drivers an opportunity to familiarise themselves with the conditions, see where the worst of the puddles are before they actually start racing. And the other advantage is, of course, they will start in single file once the green light comes out and once the safety car goes in, and that means a little bit safer heading down into the first corner at Cop, particularly as you can see when the conditions provide as little visibility as this. And now look at this, even under safety car conditions, we've got a car off. It is the number 8 car, Fabrice Wolfish, who had qualified up in 8th position, but not a very good start for him. He's stuck in the gravel already. Look at this, asking for assistance, but I really don't think that that's going to be much help. Don't forget, these cars have very little ground clearance, and it's beached effectively on the grass there, and he's digging himself in deeper and deeper, and it's really a fairly futile attempt unless they get a good number of people there. Well, the British Marshals, as ever, doing sterling service. Let's see if we can find out what happened here. This is up at Beckett, and oh yes, he lost it, just lost the back end of the car, coming through Beckett, slithered out onto the grass, and that was it for Fabrice Wolfish. I think they're going to tell him to get out of the car, and that he's going to have to cope with that, and he can't believe it. And that's understandable, because he was one of the fastest in the wet conditions yesterday, qualified pretty well in 8th place, as I mentioned, and he's thrown it away already, and that's how easy it is to do that. Now, it is a 40-lap race, as I say. The race has started. It's under safety car conditions, and it means that the laps are counting in the book here, but of course no overtaking is allowed under these conditions. Everybody just has to follow round in grid order as Fabrice Wolfish becomes our first retirement from this race, and that is very disappointing for him, of course. Everybody else treading carefully, just trying to find a little bit of grip, basically, to see what they can do. And as they come out of Luffield around to complete another lap, the safety car still bringing them around. Darren Manning and Mark Webber come across the line here at Silverstone. The Formula 3000 International Championship race here at Silverstone, certainly starting in very tricky conditions, and starting behind the safety car. It's happened in Formula 1. It's not often happened in Formula 3000 to actually start a race behind the safety car, but a very wise decision, I feel, to get the race underway. It's not racing, it's just follow my leader. But it does give an opportunity to the cars to get an idea where the worst of the puddles are, and also a chance to perhaps string them out slightly before they get into racing itself. And with this number of cars going around, you can see how much water they chuck up. Well, that does, of course, mean visibility is very low, but at least it does clear some of the worst standing water and it's that standing water that causes aquaplaning and completely unpredictable behavior from the car. And I think that's important, that at least running 26 cars around behind the safety car, they can clear some of that standing water and hopefully reduce the risk of aquaplaning once the race itself gets underway. Heading down the Hanger Straight, they're all taking it fairly steady. Plumes of spray, and you can see they're fanning out a little bit on the straight, just trying to get some visibility, just trying to see something of what's ahead of them. And let me tell you, when you're driving a single-seater in these conditions, it really is like driving in the fast lane of a motorway, passing lorries and turning your wipers off. That's the sort of visibility you have. And you know how bad it is just with your wipers on, let alone with the wipers off. That's pretty much what you can see when you're following one of these other cars. And that is a scary situation when you're travelling at speeds of up to 160 miles an hour here at Silverstone. So, safety car being brought out, starting the race under safety car. We've had 2.5 laps so far, and that's a very wise decision in terms of getting this race underway, but allowing them a chance to get used to conditions. The rain has eased off, as I mentioned earlier on. I don't think there's actually rain falling at the moment. A little bit of brightness around, and so maybe a couple more laps should be sufficient, I would think, to clear enough of the water away for them to feel confident to bring the safety car in. Now let's just see what's happening as they come around towards the latter part of the lap through Priory and Brooklands. That's the Brooklands section of track, the main sort of amphitheatre area here at Silverstone. Lots of grandstands up on the outside of Luffield's corner, and around another lap behind at the safety car here. This will be the third lap, and of course no place changing from the grid. Aaron Manning, the British driver, originally from Harrogate, leads them around, with Mark Webber, the Australian, in second place as they qualified yesterday. Justin Wilson in third position, and all of them getting very wet inside their cockpits, I have to say. There's not a lot they can do to try and keep dry in these conditions. The water just being dumped into their laps, and that's all there is for them to think about when it's like this. There's not really enough adrenaline pumping to forget all that, so they'll actually be feeling fairly wet and cold and miserable out there following the safety car around. Once the adrenaline cuts in, once they're up to racing speed, I'm sure they can forget all that, but it's not much fun just touring around at this sort of speed and waiting for things to get underway. Still, as you can see, it does give the water a chance to disperse a little bit. Here we are down the Hanger Straight, and you can see how again they've spread out a little bit. And although there's a lot of water being thrown up, again you can't see too many big puddles there for them to cross. And that's what really causes the big problems, is when there's a river across the track in areas that they have to cross, and that causes the car to aquaplane, and then of course it can go off in virtually any direction. Down towards Stowe Corner, the area that Michael Schumacher had his accident last year, now along towards Vale, tight left, and we see the cars turning left there, and then this long sweeping right-hander. There's a variety of lines in the dry around this corner, let alone in the wet. I think we'll see a huge difference in lines being taken around that corner. Slightly banked as well towards the outside, and that means that a different line can often work there. And up towards Abbey Corner, a fairly fast left-right flick before leading them under the bridge into Bridge Corner, one of the most daunting corners in Formula 1 and in Formula 3000. They can virtually flat out as they drop downhill slightly and then into that stadium section again. So here they are, through Bridge Corner, up towards Priory, down to second gear, third gear normally in the dry conditions for Priory, but perhaps dropping down an extra gear in these conditions. Sometimes some drivers preferring to use a gear lower in the wet, some a gear higher almost, to try and reduce the amount of wheel spin they'll be getting, and you can bet there'll be plenty of wheel spin once they're up to racing speed. There's Fabrice Walfish. He can't quite believe that he's put himself out of this race already. Aaron Manning continuing to lead them round behind the safety car, as the safety car brings them round once again to complete another lap. So that's 4 of the 40 laps behind safety car. I have to say, looking out of my commentary box window on the start-finish straight here, the amount of spray that's being thrown up by these cars there, you get a good view of it as they go down towards Copse Corner. And visibility really is a nightmare if you're not right up front, and that of course always gives the leader a great advantage in these conditions. Easy enough to run into the back of somebody even at these slow speeds, let alone when they get up to full racing pace. So heading up towards Beckett, a very fast left-hander. Left, right, and then left, right again. Good section of the track, this one. And then out towards Stowe, down that hanger straight. Again, spreading out a little bit, still that trail of spray that they're throwing up. And that's a great picture, isn't it? From on high, seeing the cars picking up the amount of water they are as they come down towards Stowe Corner. Mark Webber in the second car in the line there, driving for the Mercedes sports car team over the last couple of years, but now making the switch back to single-seater racing. Experienced that very scary situation at Le Mans last year when the car flipped upside down. And of course it was Peter Dumbreck, his teammate, who suffered the most scary of the flips, landing in an area within the trees, although it was actually a clear area it landed in. But Mark Webber no longer involved in sports car racing, and I think he's pretty happy about that. He wants to get back into single-seater racing. His aim, of course, is to get into Formula One. He has an opportunity. He is test driver for the Arrows team. He's been driving their two-seater car. The Arrows team, like McLaren, has built a two-seater car, and he's been driving that a little bit recently. So that's a car being built with European aviation there as well. So Webber's been given the opportunity to scare a few people in the back of the two-seater. But what he really wants to focus on is building his career, winning some races in Formula 3000, and then perhaps having the opportunity to move into Formula 1. It's been a while since we've seen an Australian driver in Grand Prix racing. David Brabham was the last, but he never really had a car to show. Now the safety car lights are off, and I think we are getting ready for the start of this Formula 3000 race. 4 laps already completed. They'll complete 5 as they come around this time. And now we have race on as Darren Manning sets off down the start-finish straight. Now let's just hope that everybody can hold it together. Justin Wilson already beginning to challenge Mark Webber into Copse Corner. Webber taking it wide, looking for grip on the outside, and Wilson took the inside line. Webber came out still in second place as Wilson follows in third position. Then it's Enrique Bernoldi and Bruno Junqueira following somewhere in the spray. Yes, there's Bernoldi, Junqueira right behind him as the rest of the field comes through Copse Corner and tries to get some idea of where they're going next through the spray. But I have to say, great job done there to get them out behind the safety car first and to start them line astern rather than line abreast, and that gives them just that little bit more space, that little bit more visibility. Look at Manning with that clear track in front of him. He's able to pull away slightly. Webber holding on to second, but under attack from British driver Justin Wilson through Stowe Corner. The car's slithering and sliding a little bit as he comes down towards Vale now, and Webber in second place, holding off Justin Wilson quite comfortably, and now putting the power on coming out of Club Corner, accelerating as smoothly as possible, almost gingerly as they try and get the power on out of this one. And then as the grip begins to increase, as the downforce comes in, then they can really begin to open up the throttle a bit more and accelerate towards Abbey Corner. Then it's on the brakes, change down. Mark Webber still holding on to second place. Darren Manning doing a great job up front to pull away an advantage here into Bridge Corner under racing conditions for the first time, and through quite smoothly. And this is where again you can see a wide line from Darren Manning. He was doing this in qualifying yesterday, trying to find the grip, and they were saying, the drivers, that going online, particularly on the Formula 1 rubber that's being laid down over the weekend, is extremely slippery. The Formula 1 cars seem to be working online quite well on their own rubber, but these cars, their tyres, perhaps not interacting with that rubber that's been laid down quite so well and sliding around all over the place. So you'll see the drivers taking really quite bizarre wide lines to try and find that bit more traction. Across the line then, with 6 laps completed, Manning has a 2.6 second advantage over Mark Webber. Webber holding on to second from Justin Wilson. Then it's Bernoldi in third, Bernoldi in fourth, Junqueira in fifth. Sahel Ayari is in 6th place, Christian Albers in 7th, ahead of Frank Montagny, David Salins, Christian Colby in 10th position, then Van Hooydonk and Mario Haberfeld. Pretty much order as they started. We haven't seen any major changes in order as yet, but perhaps as this race begins to progress and the track begins to dry out a little bit, we could see a number of changes. Confirmation of the order there. Darren Manning, our race leader. Mark Webber in second place. And look at Justin Wilson just trying to find some visibility as much as anything as he heads down the hanger straight and towards Stowe Corner. it is so difficult to see where you're going, let alone try and get alongside someone. There is Wilson, third position for him at the moment. And he's managed to open up a little gap himself over Enrique Bernoldi in fourth spot. Out of club corner, and it's Darren Manning with an advantage of 2.5 seconds. Up the hill towards Abbey Corner then, and Darren Manning. Oh, and we've got a couple of cars off here. Let's try and say, it looks like Jamie Mello was one of them, and Ananda Mikula is the other. And there is Jamie Mello, the young Brazilian who started a long way down. He was actually running in 21st. They were 20th and 21st at the end of the last lap. And this 20-year-old Brazilian, who I think perhaps has not much experience of racing in the rain from the South American Formula 3 series, having a big amount of learning to do here today. Look at the marshals doing their best to get him out. And it just is beached on, there we are, he's got it going now. Has he kept the engine running? Yes, he has. Good job then. So at least he manages to rejoin the track and rejoin the race. And Jamie Mello continues as our race leader. Britain's Darren Manning comes across the line to complete 7 laps, and his gap to Mark Webber has increased up from 2.6 seconds to 3 seconds now. Justin Wilson holds on to third position. There is Jamie Mello having rejoined. Let's take another look. Now Mello on the left-hand side, the green and yellow car, the Brazilian. And alongside him is Mikula, squeezed in. Well, yes, really wasn't. I don't know quite what he was trying to do there. There was no opportunity to shut the door on him because Mello was very much there. And I have to say that Ananda Mikula was perhaps being a little unnecessarily tight on the exit of that one to try and squeeze out Jamie Mello. The net result is both of them losing time, of course. And still, they both recover and both come around at the end of the lap. Mikula now in 23rd place. Jamie Mello is last, and we've got somebody else running wide there. That's Riccardo Maurizio in one of the Red Bull entries, and he really got it wrong there. A number of other cars down there. There's Stefan Sarrazin in that battle. They're down in 17th position. And that's a little group that's trying to work its way nearer the front. Some of the people who qualified a long way down and desperately trying to make up some ground here today in terms of scoring points. Remember, only the top 6 will score points in today's race. Stefan Sarrazin driving car number 1 for the MyTap.com McLaren Junior team. And he's in this particular battle. There he goes through. And his teammate not far behind him, Thomas Engen. Now let's take another look here, see if we can find out what was going on. Well, it was just a trip across the dirt up there at Beckett's corner for Riccardo Maurizio. He did well to get it back together, and everyone else did pretty well to avoid him as well. He rejoined the track and kept it tight, and they were able to go around the outside of him. So Maurizio survived that moment. He was 13th on the previous lap, but I think he's lost several places as a result of that. As we watch Darren Manning, our race leader, across the line to complete 8 laps now. 3 seconds his advantage last time, 2.8 seconds this time. So similar sort of times being recorded by the 2 top men at this point. With another 3 seconds back to Justin Wilson now. And obviously the danger in these conditions that is, with visibility so poor, it's so hard to get close behind another car. But they will have to watch out because there's still a number of laps to go. The rain has stopped falling for a while. Doesn't look like it's going to rain now, I have to say, for a little while. And if the track does dry out considerably, then we may be into a situation that the wet tyres will begin to wear considerably. It tends to be the front tyres that go off if it does dry up. I don't think we've got that problem yet. It's still much too wet to worry about that. But of course, still a fair bit of distance to go in this Silverstone International Trophy race. Further down the order, you can see Kevin McGarrity is running in 13th position. Supported this weekend by Dario Franchitti, good mate of his, and the Champ Car driver here at Silverstone this weekend. And lending his support to Kevin McGarrity. A number of other people here this weekend. Saw Gilles de Ferran, also over from the United States, to visit the British Grand Prix. And as ever, the British Grand Prix bringing stars from international motorsport all over the world to this venue to see what's going on. There is Kevin McGarrity, taking a look at him now. The Irishman, teammate to Justin Wilson, but Kevin had a pretty awful time of it in qualifying yesterday, so he was never really able to show that he could run with Justin Wilson. He was involved in an accident in first qualifying when Thomas Eng lost it coming through Woodcote. Kevin backed off and was touted heavily from behind. It took them most of the session to get him back out, and then in the second session he was just unfortunate in terms of timing, in terms of being on the circuit. and didn't manage to get a good lap together at all. So he languished somewhat down the grid, and McGarity now trying to make up for that. He's qualified in 17th place, now in 13th position, so he's done well, made up some places, stayed out of trouble so far, and that's really what you've got to do in these conditions, is stay out of trouble and hope to see the checkered flag at the end of the afternoon. Darren Manning up front. 9 laps completed. His advantage 3.2 seconds, so he opened it up a little bit again last time around. But really, the spray beginning to drop now, as you can see. Some places there's a bit of a line developing, and in other places still a lot of water about. Further down the order, and looking at another battle that's going on here. Number 22 car is, no, that wasn't 22, it's one of the David Salen's, I think that is, that we're looking at, and Salen's running in 9th place with Christian Colby right behind him. Salen's driving for the T2 Playlist Supernova team, and Christian Colby behind him, who has plenty of experience in British Formula 3, and off goes Stéphane Sarrazin, the Frenchman, one of the favourites for this year's championship. But what a disastrous start he's had to the season. He finished in 7th place at the first round at San Marino a couple of weeks ago, was 4th in last year's championship, but Sarrazin, who qualified way down on the grid here this weekend, down, let's have a look, where was he on the grid? He was down in 18th position, and now he's gone off in the race, and I don't know whether somebody else was involved in that or not, but for the McLaren Junior team that swept all before it last year with Nick Heidfeld, things not going at all well. Sarrazin in trouble on the grass. We'll wait to see whether he rejoins. His teammate Thomas Eng is down in 18th position, so things not good at all for that team. We'll wait and see if we have an opportunity for any replays on that one. But Stéphane Sarrazin really having a disastrous start to the season. There he is. The Frenchman won. Oh, there he went off at Beckett's, and it looks to me as though that may well have just been his own mistake. Didn't see another car next to him as we saw, picked him up on camera. Maybe to say somebody else might not have been involved, but it looks to me as though that could have been just a straightforward error. Well, he's kept it running, but look at the state of that car, splashing its way across the grass, back onto the track once again. The marshals, fantastic once more in getting him back out, but Sarrazin has lost any chance at all in this race now. That's put him right down to the back. Completely out of contention in terms of scoring points here today, and that means 2 rounds of the championship going by already with no points scored. You cannot really afford that sort of performance in this championship. You need to try and be scoring consistently. You can't win every race, it's too competitive for that really, but you've got to score consistently. Meanwhile, looking further down the order, and Victor Maslov doing a good job here. Quite a long way down the order, but still running quickly. Our leader, don't forget, still Darren Manning after 10 laps. Manning leading from Mark Webber in 2nd position. This is Webber's teammate, Victor Maslov, we're looking at the moment. And in fact, we're looking at Christian Albers there in the 2nd of these 2 cars, with Sahil Ayari just ahead of him. This is the battle for 6th position. And Christian Albers, Formula 3 champion in Germany last year, another one to make the step up to Formula 3000. And chasing after a man who's had quite a bit of experience in Formula 3000, Frenchman Sahil Ayari. As I mentioned earlier, also competing in the Indy Lights Championship in America this year. Indy Lights, the equivalent formula really of 3000 in the United States, and tricky thing to do, I think, to try and mix 2 programs together, but that's what he's doing. Not so successfully as yet. Had a bad time in Long Beach last week in the first Indy Lights race. There is our race leader, Darren Manning, and in fact he's not that far from lapping Stéphane Sarrazin, I think, because Sarrazin lost virtually a lap as a result of that moment at Beckett's we saw a few minutes ago when he went flying across the grass. There is Manning's teammate, Victor Maslov. I mentioned him earlier. He's running in 21st position, and he is behind Andreas Schell, running for the Fortec team. Another Fortec entry is Mario Haberfeld, and Mario Haberfeld just moved up a place, up to 11th on that last lap. Kevin McGarity pushed back down to 12th, so Mario Haberfeld on the move slightly, but plenty of work to do to try and get into the points. Darren Manning, still our race leader, 11 laps completed here at Silverstone. The rain has stopped falling, but the spray still considerable as they head down the start-finish straight. We're looking at a battle further down the field for 20th position between Scheld and Maslow, as 11 laps have been completed of the second round of the Formula 3000 International Championship race. Darren Manning, our race leader, from Mark Webber, Justin Wilson, Enrique Bernoldi, Bruno Junqueira, Sahel Ayari, Christian Albers, Frank Montagny, David Salins, Christian Colby, Jeffrey Van Hooydonk, Mario Haberfeld, Kevin McGarrity, Sebastian Bourdais, Nicolas Minassian down in 15th place, Ricardo Maurizio 16th, Thomas Eng in 17th, Fast Linders 18th, André Couto 19th, and Andreas Scheld in 20th position. The race starting under safety car as a result of an extremely heavy wintry shower when the race was due to get underway, and the Easter weekend really throwing everything that it can at Silverstone this weekend. I have to say that we've seen just about everything except snow, and perhaps we shouldn't say that because there's still another day of the meeting to go. And we had snow at a champ car race in America a few weeks back. Let's just hope that that doesn't happen here at Silverstone this weekend, but there's plenty enough rain to make up for it. And I know so many fans disappointed not to get the opportunity to watch qualifying today. If you're one of those fans, well, I'm sorry you didn't get to Silverstone today, but thank you for joining us here on Eurosport for live coverage of the International Trophy race for the Formula 3000. Mark Webber with the fastest lap. He runs in second place, and he's brought the gap down to 2 seconds now between himself and Darren Manning. Conditions improving slightly as we go through this race. Looking there at Christian Colby in the number 22 car, another man with plenty of experience of Silverstone in the wet, having competed in British Formula Ford and in Formula 3, a Formula Ford champion as well a few years ago, Christian Colby. But his first season in Formula 3000, he was telling me yesterday how physical these cars are to drive. Lots of upper body strength needed. It's not as easy fingertip stuff like a Formula 3 car is. He says these things, sometimes you really have to wrestle them around and work hard at the steering, particularly in the dry. In the wet, of course, physical forces are much less, as the G-forces generated by the tyres considerably less than the slicks in dry weather conditions. But certainly he's quite surprised at the level of physical effort required to drive one of these cars in dry conditions. Sahel Ayari we're looking at quickly now, a former race winner in Formula 3000, but really a man who needs to get his act together, as it were, this year if he's to have a career. He's had a lot of opportunities now and hasn't really quite delivered as yet. This year, Sahel Ayari, driving for Coloni Motorsports, had a second place finish at Silverstone here last year, in fact, driving for the Oreca team, and now finding himself under increasing pressure from Christian Albers. Christian Albers taking the inner line there, Sahel Ayari the outer line. That's the fun thing in a way about these conditions, is it does allow differing conditions. But look at Mark Webber in second position here. Already he's beginning to use wetter parts of the track in order to try and ease the wear on those wet tyres. I mentioned earlier on that the fronts tend to go off if you run them in drying conditions for a long time. I think Mark Webber very aware of that. He was telling me about it, actually, funnily enough, earlier today, and I think that he is going to be very conscious of looking after those wet tyres. He said really being front tyres that go off, there's not a lot you can do. You have to brake hard, you have to turn in. You can't protect them like you can to a certain extent with the rears. With rear tyres you just have to be a bit more careful on the throttle, and you can look after their performance more. The front tyres, he said, there's not a great deal in driving style that you can do to look after them. Well, it looked to me as though he was already beginning to use the wetter parts of the track, as I say, to cool the tyres down and give him perhaps a little more opportunity to make them last the distance. Long way still to go here. 13 laps have been completed. It is a 40-lap race, so we're only a little over quarter distance so far. It's this man, Darren Manning, who's up front, but look at Mark Webber, really beginning to close that gap up. It was down to 1.3 seconds, the gap between them last time around, and now Webber really beginning to... Oh, and there's a car off, and I think it's Sarrazin again. Stefan Sarrazin in the McLaren Junior entry. He is having a torrid time. He spins it coming out of Abbey just before the leaders come through there, so that's a fairly scary time for them. Also change as Ananda Mikula finding his way past, looks like Andreas Scheld. Mikula, who had that moment earlier on, but he's managing to make up some ground here now. But look at our two race leaders, much closer together. They're coming out of Luffield this time, and let's just see what the gap is between them. 1.3 seconds last time. You can see how close it is between them now as they come through Woodcote Corner and across the line. 14 laps, and it's under a second between the two of them. We've really got a race in our hands between Darren Manning and Mark Webber. So, Darren Manning, winner of Formula 3 race here at the British Grand Prix twice in the past. What a tremendous season he had last year, winning the Japanese Formula 3 Championship, and then winning at Macau and in Korea, the two season finale events in Formula 3. And then to earn the drive in Formula 3000 and that contract with BAR to test drive the Formula 1 car. Fantastic stuff for the man who used to be an instructor here at Silverstone. Taking a look at what happened to Sarrazin, well, he just used too much curb, basically. Ran it over the curve, and in these conditions, the sort of weight transfer you get running over the curves throws the car into a spin, and he wasn't any way he could hold back. So Sarrazin not being very impressive, I have to say, this afternoon. Look at this, battle for the lead! Wheel-banging battle for the lead! Oh, and they've hit each other several times, and Webber gets through! I think Webber really trying to find his way through there. What a tremendous wheel-banging match we saw between the two of them. Manning trying to shut the door on him, and the question is now, are both cars all right? Wing end plate comes off the side of Mark Webber's car. Darren Manning trying to shut the door. Webber saying, I'm not having that, and managing to squeeze through. Still bits of wing end plate coming off, and Manning slowing a little bit. Physical encounter indeed between the two drivers as they battled for the lead in these conditions. Well, you saw Manning was squeezing Webber onto the grass, and Webber said, I'm not having this, and bashed his way back again. I think I would call that pretty much 50-50. That was both of them being aggressive in trying to get the lead or retain the lead. And it's Webber who now leads this race for European Arrows. The test driver for the Arrows team has gone past the test driver for the BAR team, and it's the battle between the junior ranks of Formula 1, if you like. But Mark Webber has taken the lead here at the International Trophy at Silverstone. Across the line he comes, a 1.2 second advantage over Darren Manning, and Webber is flying in these conditions. Now let's take another look at this. Manning initially on the inside as Webber tried to go round the outside of him. Webber stayed on the outside, and Manning basically squeezed over and put him on the grass, and Webber said, no, I'm coming back on, and he did come back on, squeezed him out of the way, and there you go, that's it, that's how he managed. This was down at Vale and into Club Corner. Through the left hand, you see Webber's got the inside. Now Manning effectively taking the normal line there, but of course there's a car in the way that he was squeezing out. It was Mark Webber, and that meant there was contact made. Fairly slow speed down there. They're down in second gear. It's fairly slow stuff, so they were sliding around a lot, but not at high speed, and that really, I think, is how they've managed to survive that without too much damage. Exciting stuff indeed, and Webber taking his opportunity. Manning trying to shut the door. I would say again 50-50 on that one. I wouldn't really apportion blame as much as just say that's real racing. Both of them trying to take the lead of this race, and Mark Webber is the man that has taken it and has opened up an advantage over Darren Manning in second place. Justin Wilson is still in third, Enrique Bernaldi is in fourth, Bruno Junqueira in fifth, then Christian Albers in sixth, Sahel Ayari seventh, Frank Montagny eighth, David Fadens in ninth, and Christian Colby rounding out our top 10. But what drama here as Mark Webber forces his way to the front. I think we have to ask now, is there any damage to that car? It looks good to me. It doesn't look as though he's picked up a puncture in that incident, which would have been the main risk. And Manning definitely seems to have less pace. You saw a bit of the wing end plate come off there, but I don't think that will affect him too much. The aerodynamics critical, of course, but in these conditions, perhaps not as finely critical as they would be in the drive. And I think that if he hasn't picked up a puncture, Mark Webber should be in good shape. The time's improving. A 1:57.764, fastest lap again to Mark Webber. And we're back to the sort of pace we saw in qualifying yesterday, which gives us an indicator the track is beginning to dry up that little bit. And we can see that dry line being established all the way around the track. Webber taking advantage of that. Perhaps his car a little better suited to these drying conditions than the car of Darren Manning. The setup decisions that were made back under the awning with the engineers so critical, of course, and it looks as though they've made a great choice for European Arrows team with Mark Webber now beginning to set some fastest laps. Good lap on that last one by Christian Albers as well, his teammate. So it does look as though the European Arrows team have come up with a great setup for these conditions. However, having said that, we're under half distance in this motor race. A long way to go, plenty more track drying to come, and I suppose you have to ask, will it be dry enough for slick tyres later in the race? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Temperature's not that high, of course, so it's taking a while to dry the track off, but even so, we are likely to see plenty of other changes, I think, throughout the course of the remaining laps. Still some 24 laps to go here at Silverstone. So, things very much alive at Silverstone in the Formula 3000 race. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Silverstone. This is Ben Edwards bringing you coverage of the International Formula 3000 Championship race, round 2 of the series. And in rainy conditions where the rain has stopped falling, but still a very slippery track, we have Australian driver Mark Webber leading the race after 18 of 40 laps have been completed. Darren Manning, second place. Justin Wilson in third. Enrique Bernoldi fourth. Bruno Junqueira fifth. And Christian Albers in sixth place. You're looking at Nicolas Minasnia at the back of this little group. He's in the silver car there. And Minasnia was the winner of this Silverstone race last year. Won the first race at Imola, but he has not had a very good weekend so far. Really did not get it together very well in qualifying, and a long way down the order. He is in this battle. He's in 15th place. He's got Sebastian Bourdais just ahead of him in the blue car, and it's Kevin McGarity, the Irishman, in the red car just ahead of him. McGarity, teammate to Justin Wilson, as I mentioned earlier, didn't have a good day in qualifying, but holding on to this position so far, and again, trying to find where the grip is and just trying to make a move whenever possible. Up front, let me tell you that Mark Webber's opened up a 3.2-second advantage over Darren Manning, so a good lead for the Australian. Justin Wilson only a second or so behind Manning, as going off the track and skating wide indeed. Mario Haberfeld taking a spin. It's not McGarity, it is Mario Haberfeld in the number 29 car there who's gone off. Haberfeld was running in 12th place, and Mario is going all over the place in his attempts to get this thing back on the road. Driving for Fortec Motorsport, splashing its way through the puddles, desperately trying to rejoin the track once again. Oh, what a disappointing weekend it's been for Mario Haberfeld. Second season in Formula 3000. Disastrous time last year, driving for the West competition team alongside Nick Heidfeld. Failed to qualify on 5 occasions and scored no points at all. He was 10th in the first race at Imola, and he still hasn't got the thing back on the tarmac. Look at this. Can he get it over that little lip? Yes, he can. At last he gets it back on the track. And of course that put him right down to the back of the order. Let's see, it was his mistake. Same place that we've seen the problem is that sort of early part of the Beckett's complex. The right-hander, we've seen a number of cars going off there. Very fast section of track, very easy to overstep the mark, and that's where Mario lost it. And look at the amount of water on the grass there. That's what the car parks are like here at Silverstone. That's why they had to stop people coming today. And Mario Haberfeld somehow managing to find enough grip there to get back onto the track once again. High-speed spin that one was, even in the wet conditions. Coming in there at over 120 miles an hour, well over 120 miles an hour, so that was a high-speed spin indeed at the Beckett's complex. So Haberfeld drops down the order. He was in 12th. That will promote Kevin McGarity into that position now. So Kevin McGarity back up to 11th goes McGarity. Just ahead of Bourdais, and just trying to look at where Christian Colby was, and in fact no, Christian Colby still in 10th place, so McGarity in 12th position. So quick reshuffle on our totaling and scoring system here, and that confirms that Colby 10th, and Boydon in 11th, and McGarity in 12th. No change up front at the moment. Mark Webber is our race leader, almost at a halfway point now. 19 laps have been completed, and he enjoys a 3.2-second advantage over Darren Manning. A little battle that we're enjoying here. This is Sebastian Bourdais with Kevin McGarity and Nicolas Minasnia. Looks to me as though Bourdais got back past McGarity in that particular little dice. Coming across the line. Another battle going on. This is Yves Olivier, the number 28 car, and he's battling with the young Brazilian driver, Jamie Mello. This is the battle for 23rd position. It shows you that they keep dicing all the way through the field here. Up front, it's still Mark Webber who leads the race. And there is our race leader just flashing through. Their second place man, Darren Manning. Look how much closer Justin Wilson is to the back of Darren Manning's car. Just 1.2 seconds between these two now. And this the battle for second place between the two Brits. Manning, who started on pole position, but who lost the lead to Mark Webber a few laps ago in a physical encounter down there at Club Corner. And now he finds that Justin Wilson's beginning to close up. Looks to me as though Manning had a great setup for the fully wet conditions, but as the track has begun to dry off, then his setup perhaps not quite as effective in dealing with the conditions. It has allowed Mark Webber to go into the lead, and it has allowed, as here we've got somebody else off, that's Andreas Schell, who was running down in 21st position. He rejoins the track. No damage done, I think, this time. And we're looking back here at Bruno Junqueira. Now, watch out for Christian Albers. He's been driving a superb race so far. He's in 6th place. He got himself past Sahel Ayari, who's now back to 7th. And Christian Albers' teammate to our race leader, don't forget, Mark Webber, the 1999 German Formula 3 champion, Christian Albers, is right in behind Bruno Junqueira. And this is good stuff. Junqueira himself, one of the favourites for this year's championship, won at Hockenheim last year. Same season, the Petrobras Junior team. And he finished 2nd at San Marino. Taking a replay look here at what happened to Andreas Schell. Basically, he went straight on when he should have turned left, going into Abbey just that little bit too quickly. Across the gravel and straight back on, so no harm done. Now somebody else has taken a wild ride. Who's this? Oh, it's another, well, I have to say the McLaren Junior team is doing its best to put on the pirouette displays here this afternoon, but not much in terms of results. That's Thomas Eng, the MyTac.com McLaren Junior team. I should think team manager David Brown is going to have a few words with his two charges after what they've been doing here this afternoon. Sarrazin, we saw spinning out a couple of times earlier on, and he's now way down the order. And Thomas Eng there not doing a great deal better. He was running in 17th position. Here's Bruno Junqueira then, and Christian Albers. This is the battle for 5th place. Closest battle, I think, at the moment on track is between these two. Although, let me just tell you that Justin Wilson is within a second now of Darren Manning. Last time around, there was only 0.9 of a second between the two Brits. And there you can see that battle, actually. There's race leader Mark Webber. And in the background, Darren Manning in the red car. Oh, and off is the number 24 car, Victor Maslov, Darren Manning's teammate. The Russian, Maslov, with fairly little experience at this sort of level of single-seater racing. A lot of spins in qualifying yesterday. Looks as though it's out for him. It's a shame. He's been doing okay, actually. He's been running 19th in this sort of company. Not a bad effort, but it does look as though it's over for him now. Jumps out and gives the marshals a hand. And he lost it under braking there. Switched the back end of the car. Tried to get it all back together again. He wasn't trying to get past Couto as much as trying to keep it all under control. Oh, and then he stalled it. What a shame. He kept the power on, and then he stalled it. And unfortunately, that looks like it's the end of his race. So a great shame for Mr. Maslov. 19 laps to go, so we're just over half distance in this second round of the International Formula 3000 Championship. Maslov making his way back to the pits and seeing his teammate Darren Manning running in 2nd position. As we continue to look at this battle between Junqueira, the Brazilian, looking at the wide line, Christian Albers looking at the tighter line, and it's a question of finding the amount of grip that you need here. Junqueira still managing to just stay in front there of Christian Albers, taking a very wide line through Luffield, trying to get on the power. Look at Albers in the background, great stuff, sideways as he tries to get that 460, 470 horsepower onto the road, and accelerating down start, finish straight, and still in 6th place, unable to find a way past the Brazilian as yet, but he hasn't given up trying. Bruno Junqueira still a test driver for the Williams Grand Prix team. He might have lost out in terms of getting the Grand Prix drive to Jenson Button after their head-to-head contests over the winter, but Junqueira is still very highly rated, still the team's test driver, and very much a future star. Look at Albers! Oh no, he's thrown it away after a tremendous battle with Junqueira. Christian Albers just lost the back end of the car coming through Beckett, and he will be kicking himself for that one. He's driven superbly well here this afternoon, and the European Arrows team running so well with Mark Webber leading this race, and Christian Albers running in 6th place. He's got past Sahel Ayari, And what a great shame. He just got caught out there. That shows you how easy, even when you're driving superbly, it is to lose control in these conditions. And I really feel for the Dutchman. Look at this. He was close behind Junqueira. He may have lost a bit of downforce through the first part. He just ran too wide and got on the grass. And round came the back end. And there was nothing more he could do. He had such a great run into the corner. I think he just lost a bit of downforce behind Junqueira. And then that was it. There was nothing more he could do. Lost the car, and he's well in the gravel trap. And unfortunately, that's the end of the race. He was trying to get a good run on Junqueira to come along, hang her straight and overtake it to Stowe. Good effort from him, but in the end, he has to walk home. Mark Webber continues to lead, 23 laps in the books, 57.564 his last lap time. That's a 1 minute 57.564. As I mentioned earlier, that's right down to the sort of level they were doing in qualifying, although Pole was in the 56s from Darren Manning, so they're just a fraction slower still than they managed in the second qualifying session. Manning himself still in second place, opening up the gap slightly to Justin Wilson again. The track, well, I say, looks as though it's drying, but I don't really think it's making much difference, to be honest. It's too cool and breezy. It's not really drying the track off that much, and the water that's being thrown up isn't really vaporizing. It's just settling back down again on the track. In warmer conditions, you would expect the water to come off the tarmac and then vaporize and disappear, but today it's just a little bit too cool to do that. It's just settling back down on the track and keeping track conditions really too wet to think about any chance of putting slick tires on. Still a way to go, still some 16.5 laps to go in this race. Slithering around there is the number 27 car, and it's a good little sight that they're involved in. Jeffrey van Hooydonk is in that car at the moment, chased by Sebastian Bourdais, and then right ahead of him is Christian Colby. Christian Colby in the number 22 car there, trying to defend his 9th position. And Christian driving well in only his second Formula 3000 race, really enjoying the experience of Formula 3000. And as I mentioned earlier, finding it all quite different to racing a Formula 3 car, which he's been doing for the last few seasons. So far, so good from him. Got a bit held up by Mario Haberfeld on his best qualifying lap yesterday. Had a bit of a wheel-banging match with him coming out of the last few corners to set his best qualifying time. Down in the pits, David Jensen keeps an eye on his charge. Fast-minded, he is in 15th place, so he's moved up a bit, but the Linders not really managing to make that much progress. Taking another look at Mario Haberfeld, we saw him off earlier. Well, he's done it again, I'm afraid. Of course, that happens so often if you've dropped a long way down. Very difficult then to maintain the concentration and keep the pressure on. So easy to make another little mistake. Haberfeld in 19th position, so he's still running, but way down the order. Now there's Junqueira, who has seen that pressure on him from Christian Albers disappear, and that's a bit of a relief, I would think, for the 25-year-old Brazilian. 23-year-old Brazilian, sorry, a little bit making him out older than he is. There's his teammate, Jamie Mello, the number 5 car, and Jamie has just passed Andreas Schell for 20th place. So Jamie Mello, who's had a few moments today, and yesterday in qualifying, but he is just 20 years old, very much a learner at Formula 3000 this year. Comes with good credentials from South American Formula 3, but not much experience in these conditions, but he's doing all right at the moment and had a tremendous 4th place finish in the first round of the series at Imola. Sliding that car through this infield section at Silverstone, heading up in towards Luffield corner, and again that wide line he takes coming into the corner, trying to find the extra grip, the extra traction. As we look further down the order now, and Ricardo Maurizio, who had a moment earlier on in this race, now being chased by Bas Linders. It's the battle for 14th position, and Bas Linders working his way up the order, and that's their man they're watching at the moment. Bas Linders started in 25th place and now up into 15th, so he's done all right. He's done all right in a competitive series like this. It is good progress, but remember, to score points in this championship, you have to get into the top 6. So he's got an awfully long way to go. the FIA Formula 3000 International Championship, round 2 from Silverstone, and it's Mark Webber who is leading the race by 4.3 seconds over Darren Manning. Fastest lap there, as you can see, from Stefan Sarazan. Well, that's a little better to see. Sarazan, who's had a number of offs here this afternoon, now beginning to set some quick times. That's good news. But interesting to see the times really not coming down very much. They haven't improved much over the last 10 laps at all. They've only come down by a few tenths of a second. And it just shows you how long it's taking for this track to dry out in these conditions. I hope the Formula One teams are watching closely here today, because this could be useful information tomorrow to see that even when it's not raining, the track is taking a long, long time to dry off. And that will count, of course, in terms of decision-making if the Formula One race takes place in similar conditions. Our race leader, Mark Webber, is a 4.3-second advantage over second-place man Darren Manning. We're looking at the gap between him and Stefan Sarazan, which seems a little long-winded and not particularly relevant to the race at the moment. Sarazan's down in 23rd position, even if he is setting some of the fastest laps at this point in the race. Sebastian Bourdais in the number 10 car, right behind Christian Colby. Colby maybe just struggling a little bit in these conditions now. Bourdais ahead of him, and Christian Colby coming in under increasing pressure from the reigning French Formula 3 champion. We've got Formula 3 champions from all over the place in this championship, and it just tells you a little bit about the level of competition. To get to this level, you really have to have been successful at one of the better junior formulas, if you like. Formula 3 seems to be a race. Heading down, and it looks as though Sebastian Bourdais may have done enough into Stowe Corner. Yes, he got the slipstream a little bit quicker down Hanger Straight than Christian Colby, and Sebastian Bourdais has managed to squeeze his way past. Are we going to see Colby come back at him around the outside into Vale? No, I think he's going to settle into position. No, he doesn't. He does what Mark Webber did earlier. Ooh, careful, careful, careful. They're side by side again. Good stuff, this, but I think Sebastian Bourdais has got the better run. He gets a bit sideways as he comes out of cuts, gets the power down, but once again it is Sebastian Bourdais who manages to stay ahead of Christian Colby. So Bourdais moves up into 10th spot now, still several places out of the points. Same point scoring system as Formula One, and you've got to get into 6th place if you're going to score any points at this level. Sahel Ayari is in 6th at this point, Frank Montagny 7th, David Salins is 8th, Jeffrey Van Hooydonk is in 9th place, and Christian Colby is in 10th place. So there's Mark Webber, driving superbly well up front at this point. New fastest lap for Enrique Bernoldi. Bernoldi running in 4th spot, remember, down to 1 minute 57.509. But again, those times really not changing by very much. They're just coming down by hundredths of a second. The track's still really not drying up at all to shout about. The gap between Webber and Manning more relevant. That is 4.5 seconds. Manning to Wilson, 3.4 seconds, as you can see. So the top three really very evenly spaced out. There's Christian Albers. He really was driving well here this afternoon, putting Junqueira under pressure, but out of it now, threw it away at Beckett. And he's going to have to rue that moment for a few weeks while they prepare for the next event on the schedule. There's Kevin McGarity in the number 17 car. McGarity running in 12th spot. And he's now the next man to try and find a way past Christian Colby. Christian Colby, the Dane, but he spent a great deal of his life in the United Kingdom, and you would hardly know that he's got Danish blood in him when you speak to him. Very talented racer, and always very fresh and honest about his exploits behind the wheel of a racing car. As Christian doesn't really believe in making excuses, just believes in getting on with it and doing the best job that he can. His case, he's got to try and protect that position with 11 spots from Kevin McGarity. And it definitely seems as though Colby's struggling now as the track conditions are changing slightly. Dropping into the clutches of McGarity. Again, look at the wide line that Colby takes. Seems to work for him. Same at Luffield. McGarity can take a tighter line. Now it's all about the exit here. Trying to get the car straight, trying to get on the power. Look at McGarity's car as he accelerates harder. The back end slides out. But he keeps it nicely under control, and the two of them cross the line. So they, like the leaders, have now completed 28 laps out of the 40. Cox Corner, one of the most impressive corners at Silverstone here. Just a dab on the brakes in the dry. It's a daunting corner. They get through there safely, up towards Beckett's now, where we saw Christian Colby spinning earlier, as we switch our attention back to race leader Mark Webber. Now back to this battle between Colby and McGarity. Two young drivers eager to prove themselves at this level. But even, as I mentioned, to get to this level, you need to have had plenty of success. And these two have. At Formula Ford and in Formula Vauxhall, both of these have been champions. There's not many drivers in Formula 3000 that haven't won a championship somewhere along the line. And once you get here, it's even harder to win. But so important to win. If you can perform at this level in front of the Formula 1 team managers, then opportunities do come up. Never easy to get into Formula 1. But winning at this level opens a few doors, that's for sure. Webber, our race leader from Manning. The gap 5.9 seconds last time around, and the gap 2.6 seconds between Manning and Wilson. Then it's Bernoldi and Junqueira. Bernoldi is some 8 seconds ahead of Junqueira, with Ayari a further 7 seconds behind. So really the top 6 very well spaced out, I have to say, at this point. Not much of a threat from any of them to overtake. One of the closest battles at the moment is in fact for 7th position between Frank Montagny and the Belgian David Salens. Salens driving well here today. And a bit disappointed in qualifying, David Salens was. Not to go quite as quickly as he had hoped. But running well in this race so far. 8th position for him. Sort of position he was holding at Imola in the first race and then managed to throw it away. So let's see whether David Salens will be able to hold it together. You can see the fastest lap on this last lap was recorded by Sebastian Bourdais. But again, no real improvement in time. Again, just a few tenths of a second each lap. That's all we're seeing in terms of improvement. Still the racetrack far too wet and slippery to even think about putting slick tyres on. This is our race leader coming up to lap. One of the slower cars. Andreas Schell, he's just gone past. And Webber driving superbly here this afternoon. So impressed with his return to single seaters. There is Christian Colby still managing to hold off McGarity in the battle for 11th place. Still a few puddles around that Christian Colby manages to find. Perhaps again just trying to cool the tyres off a touch. But I don't think they're beginning to overheat at all. The lap times would indicate that they're in plenty good shape at the moment. 57.347 for Justin Wilson on that last lap. One of the quickest times we've seen. There's our 4th place man. We haven't seen a great deal of him. Enrique Bernoldi, the former European Formula Renault champion, who dominated Formula Renault a few years ago in the European scene, and now needing to really show that sort of form at this level to try and move into Formula 1. Last year ran with the same team, the Red Bull Junior team. Had a best 5th place at Hockenheim last season. Didn't have a good time out in Imola. Qualified well up. He was 5th place on the grid at Imola, but failed to finish after suffering a broken gearbox earlier in the race. There was a bit of contact between him and Jamie Mello. But on this occasion, I have to say, Enrique Bernoldi's driving very well indeed. There he is, running in 4th position. He's some 7 seconds behind Justin Wilson, and he's got a 9-second advantage over Bruno Junqueira, so he's not under any pressure. But driving a smooth, consistent race so far. Darren Manning coming through in second place. There is Justin Wilson in third. Hasn't been much change between those two. Stefan Sarazar still running, but he's down in 22nd place. And then Enrique Bernoldi running in fourth place. There is Kevin McGarrity once again. Still tucked under the rear wing of Christian Colby. These two have been hard at it for several laps now. Both of them likeable characters. Christian Colby very chatty and wanting to tell everybody about what's going on. Kevin a quieter man, but very determined about his racing. And suffered a bit of bad luck, has to be said, over the last few years. Was an underrated driver in many ways, perhaps, but the need to perform at this level this year really needs to get some decent results under his belt. And there is Mark Webber, our race leader. You can see a bit more brightness around. We've got some sun glinting off some of the awnings and some of the grandstands as I look out of the commentary box position here on the start-finish straight. But still, that track's not really drying out. We're still not down into the 1:56s, which we saw in qualifying yesterday. The tyre performance perhaps going away slightly, but the track, again, just not drying off at all. The temperature's too cool to see the track drying off very much. Darren Manning going past the lapped car, and there our man in fifth place, Bruno Junqueira, scoring points potentially again here, but only 2 points for fifth position. And of course the man who's looking to be heading the championship table after this race with his current work is Mark Webber. Third place at Imola a couple of weeks ago, had earned 4 points. He's looking for 10 points here today if he can stay in front to take the win, and that would give him a healthy points advantage. Junqueira was second in Imola, scoring in 6. If he gets another 2 here today, that would bring him up to 8. But quite a difference between 14 points and 8 points after just 2 races of the series. And you have to say that I don't think anybody expected Mark Webber to be a front runner in the championship, at least not from the first few races, having moved back from sports car racing. But Webber is a real professional, very impressed with what I've seen of him over the years, right from his early days in Formula Ford in the United Kingdom. I remember when he first came over to the UK, was very quick to introduce himself, make himself known, and he's a very easy man to talk to, but obviously a very determined racer, intelligent man as well, and puts a great deal of thought and commitment into his racing. And Mark Webber really showing how that sort of attitude is working for him by leading this race after 32 laps have been completed with a 4.9-second advantage over Darren Manning. Looking here at the number 15 car of Riccardo Maurizio, still involved in a battle with Fast Linders. These two have been running around together for a number of laps now. Maurizio, another of the Brazilian contingent, and there's certainly a lot of them in the series this year. We've got a few of them running up front. We've got Bernoldi and Junqueira, 2 Brazilians in the points at the moment. And then Maurizio himself somewhat further down, but nonetheless good effort. Mario Haberfeld, another of our Brazilians. Jamie Mello, they're down in 19th and 20th places. But Brazil, as ever, seeming to provide a disproportionate number of top-line single-seater races. And of course, let's not forget that it's the Brazilian on pole position for the British Grand Prix after qualifying here. Rubens Barrichello taking a superb pole position, loving these sort of damp, drying conditions. He's done it before in that sort of weather. And Barrichello on pole position for the Grand Prix, and plenty of Brazilian representation in this Formula 3000 race. Top man is Enrique Bernoldi in 4th place, with Bruno Junqueira for Brazil also in 5th position. 8 laps to go then, and it's still Mark Webber, race leader, with Darren Manning and Justin Wilson following on. Taking a look at Sébastien Bourdais, the number 10 car, running in 10th place. The next French hope perhaps for stardom in Formula 1. It's been a little while since we've seen any really successful French drivers making it to the top in Formula 1, of course, but Bourdais is the next on the ladder. Now then, Christian Colby has been passed by Kevin McGarrity, and now he's got one of the McLaren Junior cars, I think, behind him, or is that, no, it's Nicolas Minassian, in fact, sorry, it is Nicolas Minassian driving for the D2 Playlife Supernova team, and Manassia running in 13th position. The winner of the first round at San Marino, and now Manassia trying to get to terms with Christian Colby. Manassia much more experienced at this level, having contested the last couple of seasons in Formula 3000. Had a little look at trying to get into something in the United States last year. Made a visit to one of the Champ Car races, talked to one or two of the teams, but nothing came of that. Over the winter he had some opportunities, had a chance perhaps to even become test driver for the VAR team, which didn't happen in the end. And now finding himself with a good drive nonetheless. It looks for a little while as though Manassia wouldn't have a top line drive at all this year, but picked up by the D2 Playlife Supernova team, David Sears' team, one of David Sears' teams. He runs the two outfits, the Supernova and the Petrobras Junior team, of course, very, very successfully. He's taking a slightly odd route there, but nonetheless, Nicholas Manassia landing on his feet with the drive, but apparently he got that win last time out at Imola. Now he finds a way past Christian Colby, gets alongside, slices past. The Frenchman has moved up a position, and that puts Manassia into 12th place, right behind Kevin McGarity here, and it looks as though McGarity may fall as his next victim. Let's watch them as they come out of Club Corner. Take an inside line for Manassia, tentative on the throttle initially, then getting the power on and just accelerating straight past McGarity. Plenty of grip on the inside, and in fact, oh, McGarity's in trouble. Look, he slowed right down. Kevin McGarity must be in some sort of trouble because Christian Colby drove. So look at that. Look at the car twitching. There was something wrong there. I don't know whether it's a puncture or a braking problem, but something's gone seriously wrong for McGarity. Meanwhile, I saw somebody running very wide, taking an odd line. I think it's Mario Haberfeld. Let's take a look. It is Mario Haberfeld, who ended up taking a very strange line through the complex, straight across the gravel, and Mario having a torrid time here this afternoon. Back with race leader Mark Webber, and Mark has driven a strong race so far. He's still got to keep it together for a little while. 6 laps, well, 5.5 laps still to go in this one. 5.1 seconds the advantage he enjoys over Darren Manning. Justin Wilson is still in third, Enrique Bernaldi in fourth. Webber using the experience gained at racing with Mercedes for the last couple of years in sports car racing. Oh, we've got a nice little dice going on back here. That's Yves Olivier, and looks like he's still battling with Sohail Ayari, two Frenchmen together. Ayari, in fact, lapping Olivier, because Ayari running in 6th position, some way behind fifth place man Junqueira, but Sohail Ayari holding it all together this time. That's good to see. Saw him go off the road a few times in qualifying, saw him having a few accidents in Long Beach last weekend in the Indy Lights race, but he seems to have got himself together a bit here today in very tricky conditions which have claimed plenty of victims. Sohail Ayari running in 6th. That would be good enough for 1 point for the Coloni Motorsports team. Back with Riccardo Maurizio all too briefly as we then switch to race leader Mark Webber. 35 laps completed, and Maurizio and Leinders have come together. This battle has been going lap after lap after lap. Leinders trying to get across the grass. Meanwhile, Andreas Scheld is out. It's all coming alive all of a sudden as we have cars off all over the place again. That's the entry of Kit Jensen Racing, the winning team from Silverstone last year, but it looks as though he's not even going to be able to rejoin the race. He's got the car running again. This is Andreas Scheld driving Fortec Motorsport, much less experienced driver. In fact, they're entering him into some of the Italian Formula 3000 races to give him a little more experience. He's been running around in this race, having one or two little incidents, but it looks as though that's all over for him now, and that's his final trip across the gravel and the mud at Silverstone today. Let's take another look, see what happened. He came in too wide. That's into Luffield. Just basically trying to use the traction on the outside, I think. Tried to keep it going. Ooh, and slid it into the guardrail. I think they decided that that's really pretty much it. Now, this is what happened between Leinders and Maurizio. Leinders was up the inside, got on the curve on the inside. They tried to get through there side by side. It was never going to happen. Contact made. Let's take another look at the angle here. Linders on the inside, over-committed basically, and slid into the side of Maurizio. In these conditions, it's so easy to do that. Frustration perhaps building up for Linders. The net result, he's out of the race, so nobody's gained out of that. There he is, standing beside his car, and it's been another weekend to forget for Bas Linders, and in fact for the whole Kid Jensen racing team. 16th place at Imola, a non-finish for Piccini at Imola, and this time Piccini not making the race at all, and Bas Linders out with some 4 laps to go. Mark Webber continues on his way at Silverstone with 36 laps completed out of the 40. The Australian driver competing for the European Arrows team has driven a superb race, starting on the front row of the grid, following Darren Manning in the early stages when they started this race behind the safety car. After that, he gradually managed to close up the gap, got past Manning in a physical manoeuvre down at Club Corner, and since then has not looked back as he's opened up an advantage of some 4 seconds over Darren Manning in 2nd place. Justin Wilson lies in 3rd place, Enrique Bernoldi 4th, Bruno Junqueira 5th, and Suhail Ayari in 6th position. Jamie Mello we're looking at here has kept on going in spite of 1 or 2 slides onto the grass. He's in 17th position, right behind Nicola and Couto, as Mark Webber continues on his way. Lap times coming down a little bit in the last few laps, but again not by very much. The track's still not fully drying out, as you can see, and it's not just offline there are puddles, online it's still very slippery. Look at Darren Manning there, getting a bit sideways, turning into Abbey Corner. There, Stefan Sarazan, who a long way down the order, but still lapping very quickly. One of the fastest cars on the track now, Stefan Sarazan. And unfortunately, he should have done that earlier without falling off. He made too many mistakes in the early part of this race, and that means that he hasn't really been a factor at all. Out of Luffield, Mark Webber comes across the line this time to complete 37 laps. 3 laps to go to record what would be his first win in Formula 3000. I'm just trying to think back to when an Australian might ever have won a Formula 3000 race before. I'm not sure that I can think of anything. David Brabham moved up from Formula 3 straight to have an opportunity to drive straight away pretty much in Formula 1. And, well, this really is a tremendous achievement from Webber. What a return to single-seater racing it's been after the torrid time he suffered, particularly at Le Mans last year. He had a great time with Mercedes and learnt a great deal, I know, and counts greatly on the experience that he earned with Mercedes. It was a tremendous opportunity, and learning from the likes of Bernd Schneider there at the team. But Webber had a frightening time at Le Mans last year, slipping twice in the sports car, and that really wasn't much fun at all. It perhaps gave him that focus and that direction, however, to say, right, you know, single-seaters is what I want to do. I'm going to go back into it. And he's worked hard to get the money together. I know he does a lot of work promoting himself. He goes back to Australia as often as possible, trying to raise the sponsorship, trying to do PR appearances, putting the money together. Don't forget, at this level of motorsport, although these guys are on the verge of superstardom and on the verge of earning perhaps millions of dollars in Formula 1, at this level, they're still having to find the money to go racing. The teams with the cars need money to pay for this. Now, some of the teams are able to provide the sponsorship, but at this level, drivers are still, even if they're in a sponsored team, still really looking for sponsors, looking for opportunities that will help them get to Formula 1. And Mark Webber has worked extremely hard over the last few years. This is a great effort from him. I have to say, the gap has closed up a little bit between himself and Darren Manning over the last lap. Let's just see as they come across the line this time. Manning definitely closer. It was 3 seconds last time around. It's down to 1.9 seconds now. This race is not over yet. There are 2 laps to go, and Darren Manning suddenly beginning to reel in the race leader once again. This is building up to a tremendous climax at Silverstone. It's the International Trophy race here live on Eurosport, and Mark Webber beginning to feel the pressure from behind once again as this track just gets a little bit drier. It looks as though Darren Manning has looked after his tyres and is now beginning to pile of pressure on, but has he got enough time in which to do it? Heading down towards Stowe Corner on the hanger straight, trying to find on the straight this one up without a fight, and as they cross the line this time, it was 1.9 seconds, it's down to 1.4 seconds. Fastest lap of the race to Darren Manning, the man who's in second position, the Harrogate man who has driven well this weekend to take pole position, to lead the race in the early stages, and he looked after his tyres, but has he got enough in hand here to challenge Mark Webber on this final lap? Look at Webber's car sliding around. He's suffering for grip. I'm sure those wet weather tyres are really worn now, and Manning is getting ever closer to the back of Mark Webber's car. Just half a lap to go. We're heading down towards the area where they had their barging match earlier on. First of all, they deal with Stowe Corner, hard on the brakes, down to third gear, back on the power, tentatively initially, and then accelerating down this short straight section down into the Vale and heading towards Club, which is where they came together. Now, Manning not close enough to challenge here. Webber just has to keep it smooth, keep it under control through the left-hander. Bit of power on as he comes through the right-hander, not sliding it too much, get the traction, accelerate up the hill, changing up through the gears, and now approaching Abbey Corner. One car ahead of them. I think it's far enough ahead that it won't come into play on this last lap, but Manning still very close, and Webber only needs to put a wheel wrong here to throw away the opportunity for his first win at this level of single-seater racing. He hasn't raced single-seater since 1997 until that Formula 3000 race 2 weeks ago at Imola, and now he's just got to get through these last couple of corners at Silverstone to record his first win in Formula 3000, but Darren Manning still close behind him, right behind him as they come through Brooklyn into Luffield for the final time. Surely Webber is going to hold on to the win here at Silverstone. What a great drive from these two, right to the checkered flag. But Mark Webber has done enough. Darren Manning could not get back at him at the end. The checkered flag flies, and Mark Webber is the winner of the International Trophy. Round 2 of the International Formula 3000 Championship. And Darren Manning driving superbly in the closing stages to catch up the gap. He was out to about 5 seconds behind at one point, but he closed it to less than a second as they crossed the line. Webber wins it. Manning takes second place. Justin Wilson takes third place. It's a good day for the Brits as they take second and third position, and a good day in many ways for British motorsport, because Mark Webber has come through the ranks in British motorsport, British Formula Ford and British Formula 3. He went into sports car racing for a couple of years. He's back in 3000 and he's taken his first win at this level, and with it a healthy championship lead as well. Enrique Bernoldi has taken fourth, Bruno Junqueira fifth, and Sohail Ayari has taken the final point there in sixth position. A tremendous drive from Mark Webber. I have to say I'm very impressed with what we've seen from him in the first two races of the championship, and I think he's going to make a lot of people sit up and take notice of that. It's about time we had an Australian driver knocking on the door of getting into Formula One, and with the results that he's had in the early part of this season, well, perhaps we'll see a successor to the great Alan Jones, who was a champion in the early 80s. Some way away from getting a Grand Prix drive perhaps, but winning at this level certainly gives you the opportunity. He's already got that involvement with the Arrows team, and there he is, race winner from today, Mark Webber. He is over the moon with that one, and quite rightly so. Darren Manning in second. I wonder what the mood will be between them after that little bit of barging that they had at Club Corner. I would say that was just racing myself. Both of them determined to get in front, and both of them squeezing the other one. I think they were both pretty much as innocent and as guilty as each other on that one, and Webber survived it to take the win here, and sustaining it as well under increasing pressure over the closing lap. He really did close that gap up, did Manning, but it wasn't quite enough time. I think given another lap or so he might have been able to do it, and whether he was protecting those wet tyres, I'm hoping that he would be in better shape at the end, I'm not sure, but he certainly was much quicker towards the end there. And again, that last lap from him was one of the quickest, although not fastest lap, and the fastest lap went to Stefan Sarazan on the very last lap there with a 1 minute 54.304. The track at last was just beginning to dry up, I think, but it was too late for Darren Manning to do much about it. Into Parc Fermé, Mark Webber brings his car, all these identical machines, of course, all the Lola chassis, and Tom Walkinshaw very happy down there. Tom, the boss of the Arrows team, of course, and their man has won the Formula 3000 race. and he is over the moon about that, I'm sure. Thumbs up from Mark Webber. And what a great result. Backing up the third place he earned at Imola a couple of weeks ago. Mark Webber definitely on a roll now. And the sort of confidence that these results will inspire, surely in with a shout for the rest of the championship. Everybody knows that at this level, it's about being able to win every race. It's about consistently scoring, consistently being up there. And that's the sort of thing that Webber's got to try and achieve. Justin Wilson coming in third place today, and that's a great result for him. It's his best ever result in Formula 3000. Darren Manning in second place. Remember, only his first season of Formula 3000 as well. And so you have to say all of these guys have done well. The first of the experienced campaigners was Enrique Bernoldi in fourth place, with Junqueira in fifth. But Webber, Manning and Wilson all driving extremely quickly here today. Wilson, of course, in his second season, but having moved up from the former Palmer Audi series in 1998, had a couple of six-star leads last year, but a third place, very much his best result. Mark Webber, the star of the show here at Silverstone, he dealt with extremely difficult conditions. He splashed his way through the rain. He's beaten Justin Wilson and Darren Manning, and with the victory here, he is the comfortable championship leader of the International Formula 3000 Championship Series. Making their way now up towards the podium. That's Bruno Junqueira with a big smile on his face, just passing in front of the camera a second ago. And, well, he can be pretty happy, I think. Fifth place today might not be a great many points, but scoring points every time, that's what it's all about in the Formula 3000 Championship. And there is Mark Webber's car, top three cars in the Parc Fermé. It's been an exciting day of racing here at Silverstone. Thanks for joining us from Ben Edwards, a rather wet and rainy Silverstone, but a great race. Goodbye for now.